Happy September, Indie Warriors! Barely Magic Mike here, and today I'm continuing our ongoing mission to help you discover new and interesting indie games. As most of you are probably aware by now, we do a lot of indie game reviews, and yet oftentimes we can only cover a portion of whatever releases in any given week because, believe it or not, we need to sleep too. So I'm here to kick off a new type of show called Indie Spotlight. Here I'll spend some time with a few indie games we couldn't fully review in a given week and give you detailed impressions along with a recommendation of if they're worth your well-deserved time and hard-earned cheddar. As always, if you love our content, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel and consider a membership to our Patreon, where cool perks await you like a Discord community invite, early and ad-free access to upcoming shows, and a shout out at the end of each and every video we produce. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. It's Halloween soon enough that everyone should care, so let's kick this off with a look at the creepy action roguelite Katanaut, whose Steam page describes it as a Metroidvania-inspired action roguelite with Souls-like combat. Thankfully, any fellow gamers who view Souls-likes about as favorably as the term sopping moist have little to fear because not much of this game really felt Souls-y to me. While there are some Souls-esque elements here, like weapons that can optionally parry and enough game over screens to line the walls of every art gallery in Brooklyn, Katanaut really just feels like Dead Cells with slightly slower, more deliberate combat. In fact, the game is so much like Dead Cells with a cosmic horror twist that if they'd called it Eldritch Cells, it might have crossed the line to get sued, but while this level of inspiration can sometimes rub folks the wrong way, I'd say Katanaut brings enough to the table to be a worthy roguelite in its own right. Each level in a run is exactly the sort of labyrinthine map you'd expect from a Roguevania, filled with swarms of ugly monstrosities that in some cases look straight out of Dead Space or Resident Evil 4 or Silent Hill or even The Suffering. Again, originality is not much of the draw here. Nevertheless, combat requires careful consideration of your surroundings. On an Xbox controller, the X button will swing your melee weapon and the Y button fires a secondary weapon, by default a ranged gun with limited ammunition that melee attacks refill. As you move through your run, you'll unlock special attacks assignable to the trigger buttons, like the ability to teleport to the nearest enemy and slash them, or dish out an area of effect explosion that blasts enemies away from you. Most abilities I tried were fun to use with generous cooldowns that allowed me to use them frequently, just like that other game that rhymes with bed smells. Where Katanaut differs is it may often throw far more enemies your way at once even in the early game, and gives you a limited stamina meter that ensures you can't endlessly swing your sword in a crowd of baddies to take care of them. This means you'll need to approach enemy encounters carefully and when necessary from a distance to thin out the herd and ensure you won't be hit by a rogue swipe that takes down your already very limited health. When you inevitably die, as I often did in only a pathetic handful of minutes, you'll regenerate in a hub area where you can use resources you've collected to unlock new abilities, upgrade your stats, and change your starting loadout. Progression feels tangible, and the short runs, at least short based on my very poor skill level, made one more run feel like no big deal to the point where it's easy to lose a lot of time to this one. And as the cherry on top, I kinda love that you can see which areas you've explored in a given level based solely on the volume of blood splatter everywhere. It is deliciously vile. For some context, the overarching narrative has you playing as Naut, who's on a mission to the Artemis Relay, a research station orbiting a black hole where things are seemingly going pretty wrong. While that premise is plenty ripe for possibilities, from what I've experienced of the story, it's not going to be a huge draw, since lines of dialogue like, "There's some kind of cosmic horror lurking out there and we barely understand it," are, to put it mildly, way too on the nose for the level of subtlety this subgenre demands. But hey, I at least appreciate that when the game wants to tell you some of its story, it brings up a prompt that allows you to either view extended lore scene or skip it. A decision that tells me Voidmaw is a developer that knows their audience. Those who want the context surrounding all of this bloody slashing can happily gobble it up, and those that just want to play and don't really care to spend extended sequences walking around and reading on-screen dialogue can tell them to go away. I also quite like the pixel art style, even if the animations feel a little stiff when compared to its inspiration. But hey, it runs great on the Steam Deck, which is definitely my preferred platform for roguelites. As far as action roguelites go, Katanaut is far from original, but there aren't a whole lot of titles that take Dead Cells template and build it into their own thing, and that alone may make it worth a look for fans of that game. It's unlikely to knock your socks off, but is definitely worth your time. Next up is Watchword, a game that has me yet again feeling like the amount of influence Balatro had and continues to have on the indie gaming scene is wild. But with that said, I don't want to put Watchword down for having the goal to follow in some of Balatro's steps, because this is actually one of the more unique visions I've seen built around that framework. If Balatro was a roguelike take on poker, Watchword is a roguelike take on Scrabble, and does a tremendous job of meaningfully adapting its design to suit that game despite a few minor issues. Every run is composed of a series of trials, each of which you'll start on a grid where you'll build words, horizontally or vertically, using a small set of letters in your tray on the left. You're given a set number of draws and discards that can be used whenever you want, with additional draws being added after each round and replacing everything in your tray. This makes it relatively easy to build out at least a few connected words in a single turn, which are then scored based on how many marks each letter is valued at, multiplied by a number of amps you get based on the length of the word. Collect coins and pieces of cheesecake for some reason in each trial to have access to a variety of upgrades and expand your grid out from the measly initial allowance of 4x4 letters. In true Balatro-like fashion, you can also purchase a limited number of books. Yeah, books that can manipulate both the marks and amps that your letters are valued at based on the length of your word, letters it contains, and so on. Yes, it's another game trying to Balatroize some existing idea, sure, but the execution is clever, charming, and it has a really solid soundtrack. And while there's no official controller support at the moment, I use the right trackpad and trigger button as mouse and keyboard on the Steam Deck and managed to play it that way with absolutely no issues. The only notable issue I did have with Watchword was a minor design choice that wasn't my favorite. For reasons beyond my understanding, once you take a letter out of your tray and put it on the grid, you're not allowed to put it back. You have to either put it below that in your hand, which doesn't change but has limited space, find a place for it on the grid, or use one of your limited discards to get rid of it. It feels like this limitation is aimed at punishing the player for just making up words to see if they'll take, which I sort of understand, but firstly, I always manage to do that anyway. And secondly, it's rare but genuinely annoying when a word you spell is real and the game won't recognize it, but you can't put the letter back. Yes, it wouldn't give me points for queef, and I got mad about it. And also, yes, I'm not very mature. Let's move on. Its dictionary's prudeness aside, Watchword is a great roguelike that does exactly as advertised with no shortage of clever touches. If you like Balatro and you like Scrabble, there is a near 0% chance that you don't like this, so keep an eye on it for when it releases on September 15th. The final game I'll look at in today's video is Starbirds, a resource management game with base building and automation elements that just happens to also be a goofy story about birds in space. Starbirds launches into early access this week, and while early access is not generally my bag, it's hard not to be excited for a new project from the developers of Dorfromantik, one of the most refreshingly chill games I've ever played. And I'm happy to say that despite a few bugs that aren't unexpected with early access, Starbirds does a great job of taking the satisfaction of an automation game, but streamlining it for an audience that may not be into spending hundreds of hours optimizing a factory. I respect the fact that this isn't a roguelike or an endless building game. Instead, it's a discrete series of levels and side levels you travel to with your spaceship, with some simple but charming cutscenes in between. I won't pretend I cared much about the story, but it doesn't get in the way, and it's silly enough that I didn't feel compelled to skip the cutscenes. Each level is composed of a variety of asteroids that hold different types of resources. To get started, you'll zoom into an asteroid and place a launch pad, which will periodically send rockets of connected resources back to your spaceship as you build resource extractors around it. The process of building these extractors and connecting them to the launch pad using the game's oddly satisfying freeform connecting tool is simple and intuitive. And I love that the game allows you to build all around each asteroid in 360 degrees rather than limit you to a particular section. While some resources can be extracted and sent back to the station as is, many will need to be refined from one resource to another or combined in a chemical lab to create more complex types of material like glass. It could feasibly get confusing to determine which resources need to feed into where and combine with what to get what you need, but the game does a great job of keeping this approachable and making sure that the relevant info is easy to access and understand. Clicking on any resource in your objective will either tell you where in the level you can harvest it from or give you a recipe for how to create it. Set up supply chains efficiently, get the correct resources to fulfill your objectives, and then you can choose to either keep building once you finish your missions or move on. Each level has multiple completion goals, which is nice to add some content if you finish what's available in early access. And while I did have a couple of technical issues, like one of my rovers totally bugging out and not following the path I set for it, or a resource chain that seemed to randomly clog with space traffic at one point, overall, for an early access game, this is great fun to play and feels pretty polished. The colorful visual style is great too, although I wish for more on the soundtrack front. The tunes you hear are pretty good, but limited, and large parts of the game feel unusually silent at the moment. However, even in its early access form, Starbirds managed not to break the streak of games great to play on Steam Deck, as it's totally playable and runs well there, albeit without official controller support, so you might need to map a few things. Alright Indie Warriors, that's it for this week's picks, and all of them were pretty good ones that I'm eager to continue playing. Let me know if you plan on checking any of these titles out in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time for more of the honest indie gaming coverage that you rely on.